Commander Day-Wan stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, his hands pressed against the cold glass. Below him, through the massive viewing window, Earth appeared as a small blue marble surrounded by thousands of tiny lights. Those lights were ships, enemy ships. The Krithak swarm had arrived 3 hours ago, and already the outer defense grid was failing. He turned back to face the council chamber. Dozens of alien species sat in their elevated seats watching the holographic display, with what seemed like mild interest. Some were taking notes. Others were discussing amongst themselves in languages he couldn't understand. None of them looked concerned. "Please," Day-One said again, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "We need immediate military support. The swarm has 50,000 vessels. We have 200. Our people are dying." Arbiter Velkath, a tall reptilian creature with silver scales, leaned forward. His eyes were cold and ancient. "Commander, the Council has protocols. We do not interfere in swarm encounters. It is the natural order of the galaxy. Species either survive or they do not." "Natural order?" Day-Wan's voice cracked. "You're talking about 3 billion people, families, children. We just joined this council 6 months ago. You told us we were part of a greater community." A bird-like counselor named Rixana clicked her beak sadly. "We sympathize with your situation, Commander. Truly. But the Krithaks have destroyed 17 civilizations in the past century. Every species that fought them lost. The Council cannot risk its resources on a battle that cannot be won." Day-Wan looked at the holographic display again. Red dots representing swarm ships were pushing through the defense lines near Mars. Blue dots, human ships, were disappearing one by one. He recognized the formations. Captain Hana was leading the defense there. She had 3 children waiting for her back on Earth. "So you'll just watch us die?" he asked quietly. "We will honor your species in our records," Velkath said. "That is all we can offer." Day-Wan wanted to scream. He wanted to grab the ancient reptile and shake him. Instead, he straightened his uniform and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, he could hear the counselors returning to their discussions, placing bets on how long humanity would last. Some were saying 3 days. Others were more generous and said a week. In his private quarters, Day-Wan pulled up the communication screen. The signal was weak, but still connected to Earth's command center. General Kyung's face appeared, covered in dust and blood. "Tell me you got help," Kyung said. "They refused. Said it's against protocol." Kyung closed his eyes for a moment. In the background, Day-Wan could hear explosions and alarms. "Then we do this alone." "Just like always." "How bad is it?" "Tokyo is gone. Sydney is burning. The swarm broke through the lunar defenses 20 minutes ago. They're landing in Europe and North America now." Kyung paused. Day-Wan were activating Prometheus. Day-Wan felt his blood run cold. "Are you insane? That protocol was supposed to be a last resort. We don't even know if it works." "We're already at the last resort," Kyung said. "The Council abandoned us. Earth is burning. We have nothing left to lose. But the side effects don't matter if we're all dead." Kyung's face softened slightly. "Get out of there. Find any survivors who made it off-world. You're going to need to rebuild whatever's left of us." The screen flickered. Behind Kyung, someone was shouting about hull breaches. "I have to go," Kyung said. "Tell the Council they made their choice. We'll remember it." The transmission cut out. Day-Wan sat in the darkness of his quarters for a long time. Through his window, he could see other ships coming and going from the Council station. Traders, diplomats, tourists. Life going on as normal while his world died. He pulled up another channel. This one connected to Captain Hana's flagship near Mars. Her face appeared streaked with sweat and determination. Behind her, the bridge crew was working frantically at their stations. "Commander!" "Did the Council? No help is coming," Day-One said. Hana's jaw tightened. She nodded slowly. "Understood. We're falling back to Earth orbit. We'll buy as much time as we can." "Hana!" Kyung activated Prometheus. Her eyes widened. "God help us all." "Maybe there is no God," Day-One said bitterly. "Or if there is, he's watching just like the Council." "Then we'll do it ourselves," Hana said. "Like we always have." She looked off-screen at something, then back at him. "Day-One, if we don't make it, tell my kids I tried. Tell them their mother fought." "You'll tell them yourself," Day-One said, but he knew it was a lie. "Yeah," Hana smiled sadly. "Sure." The transmission ended. For the next 48 hours, Day-Wan watched the feeds. He watched as Earth's great cities fell one by one. He watched the swarm ships land like locusts, covering the surface until he could barely see the blue and green beneath. He watched the human fleet make its last stand in Earth orbit, taking down 10 swarm ships for everyone they lost. But it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The council members came and went from the observation deck. Some brought food and drinks, turning the extinction of humanity into a social event. They discussed the tactics, the ship designs, the fascinating biology of the swarm. None of them mentioned the billions dying below. On the third day, the last human defense satellite went silent. Earth's communication grid collapsed. The planet that had been blazing with lights and signals went dark. The swarm had won. Velkath approached Daewon at the observation window. "It is over, Commander. You fought well. Your species showed remarkable courage." "Get away from me," Daewon said quietly. "There is no shame in—" "I said get away from me." The reptilian counselor studied him for a moment, then walked away. Daewon heard him telling others that they should prepare to erase Earth from the official records. "Standard procedure for extinct species," he was saying. Daewon's communication device buzzed. A new message, heavily encrypted, source unknown. He opened it with shaking hands. The message contained only 6 words. "Protocols released. God forgive us." Below, through the viewing window, the swarm began to leave Earth orbit. They were moving on to their next target, leaving behind a dead world. Or what they thought was a dead world? Daewon looked at those 6 words again. He thought about Prometheus, about what humanity had built in secret, in the deep laboratories beneath the mountains, in the hidden facilities on the dark side of the moon. He thought about the price they had paid to create it and the price they would pay to use it. The Council thought humanity was extinct. They thought Earth was finished. They were wrong. 3 days after Earth fell silent, the Galactic Council held a celebration. They called it a memorial service, but Admiral Suji knew better. She watched from the doorway as counselors from 100 different worlds raised their drinks and discussed how fascinating it had been to watch humanity's final stand. Some were already selling recordings of the battle. Suji limped into the hall, her uniform torn and stained with blood that wasn't all hers. Behind her came 30 other survivors, all that remained of Earth's once mighty defense fleet. 2,000 souls scattered across damaged ships, running on emergency power and desperate hope. The room fell silent as she approached the center platform. "We request asylum," Suji said, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. Under Galactic Council law, refugees from destroyed worlds are entitled to protection and resettlement. High Arbiter Kolvex, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, pulsed with what might have been irritation. "The Council will debate this matter. Return to your ships and await our decision." "How long?" Suji asked. "These things take time. Perhaps a few weeks. We have 3 days of life support left." Kolvex pulsed again. "Then you should have maintained your ships better." Suji wanted to hit something, but she was too tired. She turned and walked out, her survivors following behind. In the corridor, they passed Daewon, who had been waiting outside. "They're going to refuse, aren't they?" she asked him. "Velkath is pushing for it," Daewon said. "He's arguing that humanity might carry swarm contamination. It's nonsense, but enough counselors are scared. Where else can we go? Nowhere. Every other station in this sector requires council approval." Daewon ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from their academy days together. He only did it when things were truly hopeless. "There's something else. Dr. Minho wants to speak with you. He says it's urgent." They found Dr. Minho in one of the station's research labs, staring at a screen filled with numbers and symbols. The scientist looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hands shook as he gestured for them to come closer. "The final transmission from Earth," Minho said. "I've been analyzing it. Everyone thinks it was just noise, the death scream of our communication network." "It wasn't?" Suji asked. "No, it was mathematical. Coordinates, to be precise." Minho pulled up a star chart. These coordinates pointing to 12 different locations in the solar system. "I think they're markers. Markers for what?" Minho's hands shook harder. "I don't know. The Prometheus project was compartmentalized. I only knew my part. But these coordinates, they match locations where we had deep research facilities, the kind the Council never knew about." Daewon leaned forward. "What was in those facilities?" "I can't say. Classified above my level." Minho looked at them with frightened eyes. "But I can tell you this, the power readings I'm Seeing from those locations don't match anything humanity had before the swarm attacked. Something down there is active. Something big. An alarm suddenly blared through the station. Suji's military training kicked in immediately. That's a proximity alert. Something just entered the system. They ran to the nearest observation deck. Through the windows, they could see Council defense ships moving into formation. On the screens, the tactical display showed multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. The swarm had returned, but they weren't heading for the Council station. They were moving back toward Earth's solar system. Why would they go back? Suji wondered aloud. There's nothing left there. Unless there is, Day One said quietly. Over the next week, the Council tried to monitor what was happening at Earth. They sent probe after probe into the solar system. None of them came back. The last one transmitted for exactly 42 seconds before going silent. In those 42 seconds, it sent back images that made the entire Council chamber erupt in confused shouting. Suji stood with Daewon and Minho, watching the recording play again and again. The probe had captured footage of Earth's moon. On the lunar surface, massive structures were rising from beneath the dust. They looked like nothing humanity had ever built before, or at least nothing they had shown the galaxy. The structures were black and smooth, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They hummed with energy that made the probe's sensors scream warnings. What are those? Suji whispered. Prometheus, Minho said. It has to be. Those are the weapons platforms we heard rumors about. The ones they said were impossible to build. They don't look human, Day One observed. They're not. Not entirely. Minho pulled up classified files that he definitely shouldn't have had access to. Before the swarm came, there were experiments, combining human technology with something else, something we found in the ice of Europa. We couldn't figure out what it was, but it responded to genetic material. Human genetic material. You're saying those things down there are alive? Suji asked. I'm saying they're both. Machine and organism. Technology and biology. We created something new and now it's awake. The Council sent more probes. All of them died. They sent a manned scout ship, crewed by volunteers from a warrior, species called the Kran. The ship entered Earth's orbit and immediately began broadcasting distress signals. The Council chamber fell silent as they listened to the Kran crew's final transmission. We are under attack. I repeat, under attack. Human vessels. No, wait, they look human, but God, they're moving so fast. How are they moving that fast? Our shields are down. They're boarding us. I can see them through the hull cameras. They're wearing armor, black armor, and The transmission ended in static and screaming. Velkath stood before the assembled council, his silver scales catching the light. This is a clear threat to galactic security. The humans have unleashed something dangerous. We must contain it immediately. Contain it how? Rixana challenged. We can barely get probes near Earth. Whatever they've awakened, it's beyond our current capabilities. Then we use the stellar lance, Velkath said. Sterilize the entire system. Suji stepped forward from the observation gallery. You can't be serious. There might be survivors down there. Real people. If there are people down there, Velkath said coldly, they are no longer the humans we knew. They are something else. Something we cannot allow to spread. Before the council could vote, every screen in the chamber suddenly flickered. A new transmission appeared. It showed Earth, but not the dead world they expected. The cities were still ruins, yes, but something was moving through them. Thousands of somethings. The camera zoomed in on one of them. It was human, or it had been. The figure wore armor that seemed to be part of their skin. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. They moved with a speed and grace that should have been impossible. And they were hunting swarm. Warriors through the rubble of what had once been Beijing. The council watched in silence as the human soldiers took apart swarm warriors with their bare hands. The swarm, those unstoppable killers that had destroyed 17 civilizations, were running. They were afraid. The transmission ended with a message in simple English. You left us to burn. We survived, and we remember. Suji felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at Daewon, who looked back at her with the same thought written on his face. Humanity hadn't died on Earth. It had been reborn, and whatever crawled from the ashes was something the galaxy had never seen before. They're not trying to survive anymore, Minho whispered. They're hunting. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 12 hours straight. Counselors shouted over each other in dozens of languages while translators struggled to keep up. On every screen in the chamber, the same horrifying footage played on loop. The Krethak swarm was dying. Admiral Suji sat in the human delegation section, watching species that had ignored Earth's pleas now panic over humanity's response. Part of her enjoyed their fear. The rest of her was simply terrified of what her own people had become. The entire swarm fleet has gone silent, reported a pale blue counselor from the Nexian Collective. We've lost contact with every single ship that returned to Earth's solar system. That's over 40,000 vessels. How is that possible? Kolvex's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been fear. The swarm has never lost a full fleet. Never. Dr. Minho stood up from his seat and the chamber fell silent. The scientist had become an unofficial spokesman for the off-world human survivors. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago. We need to understand what Prometheus actually is, Minho said. I've pieced together what I can from classified fragments. The project had 3 components. First, genetic enhancement of human soldiers. Speed, strength, healing, all pushed beyond natural limits. Second, cybernetic integration directly into the nervous system. And third, he paused, something we found on Europa. Something ancient. Something that wanted to bond with human DNA. You created super soldiers, Velkath said accusingly. Weapons specifically designed to survive, Daewon interrupted, standing beside Minho. To survive when the galaxy abandoned us, when you all sat here and watched us burn. The morality of our decision can be debated later. Rixana clicked her beak nervously. Right now, we need to understand what we're dealing with. You're saying these enhanced humans are responsible for destroying the swarm fleet? I'm saying we don't know the full extent of what they can do, Minho replied. The Prometheus protocol was designed to activate only during an extinction-level event. It's never been tested. We're seeing it in action for the first time, just like you are. A new transmission appeared on the screens. It came from deep space, near where the swarm fleet had last been detected. The video quality was poor, clearly taken from a damaged probe that had somehow survived. The footage showed a swarm hive ship, one of the massive bioorganic vessels that served as mobile colonies for the species. Its hull was breached in 1,000 places, but the damage wasn't from weapons fire. Something had carved through it from the inside. As they watched, human soldiers emerged from the breaches, moving in coordinated teams through the vacuum of space without suits. Their armor generated its own life support, shimmering with energy fields that shouldn't have been possible with human technology. They're not using ships, a Kran military observer noted with grudging respect. They're boarding swarm vessels directly and killing everything inside. The footage shifted to show the interior of the hive ship. Swarm warriors, each one capable of tearing through steel, were running through the organic corridors. Behind them came the humans, moving with predatory patience. One of them looked directly at the camera probe before destroying it. In that brief moment, Suji saw the soldier's eyes. She recognized something in them. Not rage or madness, but something colder. Purpose. We're receiving a transmission from Earth, a technician announced. It's Colonel Jiwan. Everyone in the chamber knew that name. Jiwan had been one of Earth's top military commanders in charge of special operations. She had been on Earth when the swarm attacked. Her face appeared on the screens. She looked different. Her eyes held that same unnatural glow the other enhanced soldiers had. Her skin seemed to shimmer slightly, as if she wasn't entirely solid. But her expression was calm, almost friendly. Greetings, Galactic Council, Jiwan said. I apologize for the delay in contacting you. We've been busy. Colonel Jiwan, Kolvex pulsed forward. We demand an explanation for your actions. The destruction of the swarm fleet. The swarm attacked our world, Jiwan interrupted smoothly. They killed 3 billion of our people. We responded. That's all. You've committed genocide, Velkath accused. The entire swarm species is still very much alive, Jiwan smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The fleet you're worried about was merely a small fraction of their total numbers. We tracked them back to their home system. We found their breeding worlds, their core colonies, their central hive structures. The screens changed to show a massive world covered in organic structures. It was the swarm homeworld, something the Council had searched for centuries without success. As they watched, human warships unlike anything in the galactic database appeared in orbit. These weren't the crude vessels Earth had shown the Council before. These were sleek, deadly, and clearly built with technology far beyond what humanity should have possessed. Stop, Kolvex commanded. You cannot attack their homeworld. The loss of life will be less than what they inflicted on us, G1 said coldly. But don't worry. We're not monsters. We're giving the swarm a choice. The Swarm Queen appeared on a split screen. She was ancient and massive, her form barely fitting in the chamber that held her. When she spoke, it was in the clicking, screeching language of her kind, translated by council systems. Please, the Queen begged, stop them. They are hunting my children through our sacred breeding grounds. They do not tire. They do not stop. They have already killed millions. Make them stop. Suji felt sick. The Swarm Queen was begging. The species that had destroyed 17 civilizations was begging for mercy. We gave you a choice, G1 said, addressing the Queen. Leave this galaxy, all of you. Every ship, every colony, every single swarm organism. Find a new galaxy far from here. You have 72 hours to begin your evacuation. We cannot leave our homeworld, the Queen said. This is where we were born, where we have lived for 1,000,000 years. You took our world from us, G1 replied. You burned our cities. You killed our children, and the council watched and did nothing. Her glowing eyes fixed on the camera. The swarm will leave or the swarm will die. Those are the only two options. This is madness, Velkath stood up. We cannot allow one species to threaten another with extermination. Council forces will intervene. G1's smile widened. Please do. We've been wondering how our new ships perform against Council warships. We'd welcome the field test. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Council station. Suji's military implant connected to the station's defense network automatically. What she saw made her blood run cold. 30 human warships had appeared at the edge of the system. They hadn't jumped in through normal hyperspace. They had simply appeared, as if they had teleported across light years in an instant. Those are Ghost Fleet vessels, Minho whispered, reading the same data Suji was seeing. The ships we were building in the hidden facilities. I thought they were decades away from completion. Apparently not, Day1 said. G1's voice came through the speakers again. We're not here to fight the Council, not yet. We're here to make sure you understand the new reality. Earth survived. Humanity survived, and we are done being victims. The Ghost Fleet ships moved into formation around the Council station. They made no threatening moves, but their mere presence was threat enough. Each ship bristled with weapons that Council sensors couldn't identify. We remember everything, G1 continued. We remember who voted to help us. All 12 of you will remember. And we remember the rest of you who watched us burn. Consider this a warning. The galaxy has changed. Humanity has changed. The transmission ended. The Ghost Fleet remained, silent and ominous. 3 months had passed since Colonel G1's ultimatum, and the galaxy held its breath. The swarm homeworld had gone silent 1 week after the deadline. Long-range probes confirmed what everyone feared. 17 trillion swarm organisms, wiped out in a systematic extermination that made military historians across the galaxy shudder. Admiral Suji walked through the rebuilt human section of the Council station, barely recognizing it. Where there had been a small delegation office, humanity now occupied an entire wing. Hundreds of survivors from scattered colonies had gathered here, along with something new, enhanced soldiers from Earth, the Prometheus generation. She passed a training room where young Counselor Hei-In was teaching pre-war human customs to a group of soldiers who had spent the last 3 months hunting through swarm ships. They listened with strange intensity, as if trying to remember what it meant to be human rather than a weapon. Admiral, one of them nodded as she passed. His name was Taman, and he had been a teacher before the swarm came. Now his eyes glowed with that eerie light and he could tear through steel with his bare hands. At ease, Suji said softly. She still wasn't used to commanding soldiers who could kill her in a heartbeat. They followed orders out of respect. Not because she could enforce them. She found Day1 in what they now called the Situation Room. He was reviewing reports with Dr. Minho and General Kyung, who had survived after all. Kyung looked different now, enhanced like the others, but he carried himself with the same military bearing he'd had before. The Council is meeting again, Day1 said without looking up. Velkath has been making alliances. He wants us expelled from the station. Can he do that? Suji asked. He's got 30 votes, maybe more. Day1 finally looked at her. He's arguing that we're a threat to galactic stability, that we need to be contained before we destroy another species. We only destroyed the swarm because they tried to exterminate us, Suji said. Tell that to the council, Kyung said dryly. They're terrified. Good, they should be. Dr. Minho pulled up a holographic display. There's more. We've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. At least 6 species are discussing a preemptive strike against Earth. They're calling us the human threat. Let them try, Kyung said coldly. That's exactly the attitude that's making things worse. Hayen's voice came from the doorway. The young counselor entered looking frustrated. We need to de-escalate, not threaten more violence. They watched us burn, Kyung said, his enhanced eyes fixing on her. They let billions of our people die, and now they're afraid we might do the same to them. Good. Fear keeps species honest. Fear also starts wars, Hayen countered. We can't become the very thing we hated about the swarm. Before Kyung could respond, alarms blared again. It was becoming a familiar sound. Suji pulled up the defense network and cursed. The Council defense fleet just activated, she reported. 300 warships moving into attack formation around the station. Velkath's making his move, Day One said grimly. They ran to the Council chamber, arriving just as High Arbiter Kolvex was calling for order. The crystalline being pulsed with agitation. The Council has voted, Kolvex announced. By a margin of 78 to 44. We have determined that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic security. The human delegation is hereby expelled from the Council, effective immediately. All human vessels must leave Council space within 24 hours. And if we refuse, Daewon asked calmly. Then you will be removed by force, Velkath said with barely concealed satisfaction. The Council fleet is prepared to enforce this decision. 300 ships, Kyung said thoughtfully as if discussing the weather. That's barely a training exercise for us now. The chamber erupted in shouting. Councilors were demanding explanations, threatening sanctions, calling for immediate military action. Through it all, Kyung stood calmly, that small smile on his face that made Suji nervous. You're bluffing, Velkath accused. Humanity may have destroyed the swarm, but you cannot stand against the combined might of the Galactic Council. You want to test that theory? Kyung asked. Please do. General, stand down, Hayen said urgently. This is exactly what they want. An excuse to attack us. They already have their excuse, Kyung replied. They're scared. Scared species do stupid things. Rixana, one of the few counselors who had voted to help Earth, flew down from her perch. There must be another way. Humanity deserves a voice in the Council. What happened to you was wrong. We failed you. Yes, you did, Daewon said. And now you want to compound that failure by attacking us. We want peace, Kolvex said. But we will not allow one species to hold the galaxy hostage with superior military force. That's exactly what the Council has been doing for 10,000 years, Dr. Minho spoke up. He pulled up historical records. I've been researching Council history, the parts you don't advertise. In the past 3,000 years alone, you've ignored 11 extinction-level events. 11 species cried out for help just like we did, and you let them all die because helping them was against protocol. The chamber fell silent. Those situations were different, Velkath said, but his voice lacked conviction. Were they? Minho continued. The Karishi, the Ven, the Torakai, all gone because the Council decided it wasn't worth the risk to help them. We're just the first species that survived and came back to ask why. This is ancient history, Kolvex said dismissively. It's not history to us, Kyung said. It's a preview. You let species die when it's convenient. You only act when you're threatened. Well, now you're threatened, and you're right to be. The station shuddered. Suji's implant immediately pulled up the tactical display. Her heart sank. Velkath just activated the station's weapons grid, she reported. He's targeting the human quarter. Impossible, Kolvex pulsed in shock. I gave no such order. Override codes, level 9 authorization. Minho read the data stream. Velkath has been planning this. The reptilian counselor stood tall. The humans are too dangerous. This ends now. Stand down, Kolvex commanded. I am the High Arbiter. You do not have the authority. I have the authority of survival, Velkath said. Fellow counselors, join me. Remove this threat before it's too late. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then about 40 counselors stood up, moving to stand with Velkath. A coup happening in real time. Suji reached for her sidearm. knowing it was useless against the kind of weapons that were about to fire. Beside her, Kyung simply smiled. "You should have taken the peaceful option," the general said. Every light in the council station went dark. Emergency power didn't kick in. The weapons grid went silent. Even the artificial gravity flickered. When the lights came back on 10 seconds later, 30 human soldiers stood in the chamber. They had somehow breached the most secure facility in the galaxy without triggering a single alarm. Colonel Ji-won stood at their head, her enhanced form radiating controlled power. "Did you really think we'd come to your station without a backup plan?" she asked conversationally. "We've had access to your systems for weeks. Every weapon, every defense, every secret protocol. We've been watching everything." Velkath backed away, but there was nowhere to go. "You wanted to know what humanity had become?" Ji-won continued. "We're not victims anymore. We're not supplicants begging for scraps from your table. We're the people who survived what should have killed us, and we remember every species that watched us burn." "What do you want?" Kolvex asked quietly. Daewon stepped forward. "Justice, reform. A galaxy where species help each other instead of hiding behind protocols written to protect the powerful. The council system is broken. It's been broken for millennia. It ends today. And if we refuse?" Velkath asked. Kyung's smile widened. "Then we do this the hard way." 6 months after Earth burned, Admiral Suji stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Luna station and watched ships from 100 worlds approach. This time they weren't coming as conquerors or observers. They were coming as equals, the new Galactic Summit, they called it, the first gathering under the reformed council charter. Suji still couldn't quite believe it had worked. The transition from the old system to the new had been surprisingly peaceful, once the old council realized humanity wasn't bluffing about their capabilities. "Penny for your thoughts?" Daewon approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee, grown in the hydroponic gardens that now covered half of Luna's underground facilities. "I was just thinking about how different everything is," Suji said, accepting the cup. 6 months ago we were refugees begging for scraps. Now we're hosting a galactic summit. "We earned it," Daewon said. "The hard way." Below them, Earth was visible through the viewport. The planet still bore scars from the swarm attack, but recovery was accelerating. Massive construction ships from a dozen species worked in orbit, honoring their part of the reparations agreement. The new council charter required that any species suffering an extinction-level event receive immediate aid. And those who had watched Earth burn were now paying to rebuild it. "How's the integration going?" Suji asked. "Better than expected. The Prometheus soldiers are adapting. Dr. Minho's treatment protocols are helping them retain their humanity while keeping the enhancements." Daewon paused. Most of them anyway. They both knew what he meant. Some of the enhanced soldiers had gone too far into the darkness. They had become pure weapons, unable to turn off the predator instincts that Prometheus had awakened. General Kyung was working with them, trying to find a balance. Speaking of which, Daewon nodded toward the entrance. "Here comes our favorite general." Kyung entered the observation deck, his enhanced form moving with that unnatural grace that still made Suji's instincts scream danger. But his eyes were clearer than they had been months ago. "More human. The delegates are arriving," Kyung reported. "We have representatives from 83 species so far. More are coming." "Including Velkath's people?" Suji asked. "Yes, though not Velkath himself." Kyung's expression darkened. He and his faction are on exile station. They'll spend the rest of their lives there thinking about their choices. It had been Councillor Ha-Yin who had convinced them not to execute the old council members who had tried to attack humanity. "We can't become executioners," she had argued. "That's not who we are." In the end, exile had been the compromise. The conspirators would live, but they would never see their homeworlds again. "Admiral Suji," a young voice called out. Captain Hana walked onto the observation deck looking healthy and whole. She had been found in the wreckage of her flagship, kept alive by emergency medical systems until rescue teams could reach her. The reunion with her children had been broadcast across the galaxy, a symbol of humanity's resilience. "Captain," Suji smiled, "shouldn't you be with the fleet?" "The fleet can spare me for a few hours," Hana said. "I wanted to see this, the summit." Everything we fought for, she wasn't alone. Behind her came Colonel Ji-won, Dr. Minho, and a dozen other survivors from the battle for Earth. They gathered at the viewport, watching the ships arrive. "We did it." Minho said quietly. We actually changed the galaxy. The galaxy changed us first, G1 replied. Her enhanced eyes tracked the incoming vessels with automatic tactical assessment. We just made sure the change went both ways. The doors opened again and Councillor Hayin entered with several delegates from other species. Among them was Rixana, the bird-like counselor who had been one of humanity's few advocates during the darkest days. The summit is ready to begin, Hayin announced. Commander Day-Wan, as the new High Arbiter, you're expected to give the opening address. Day-Wan looked startled. I thought we agreed Kolvex would handle that. Kolvex insisted it should be you. Rixana clicked her beak in what might have been approval. He says humanity earned the right to lead. Besides, most species are too afraid of you to argue. They shouldn't be afraid, Hayin said firmly. That's the whole point of this summit. To build trust. Trust takes time, Kyung said. Fear is faster. But fear isn't sustainable, Suji countered. Eventually, species will resent us. Or worse, they'll unite against us. Which is why we're sharing the Prometheus technology, Minho said. Carefully, selectively, but sharing it nonetheless. That had been the most controversial decision. 3 species had already requested access to the enhancement protocols. The Kran warriors wanted to become stronger to defend their worlds. The Vexian scientists wanted to study the human-alien hybrid technology. The Taurian explorers wanted the ability to survive in hostile environments. We're creating super soldiers for other species? One of the delegates asked nervously. Isn't that dangerous? Everything is dangerous, Jiwan said. But it's more dangerous to hoard power. The swarm nearly destroyed us because we were alone. The old council let us burn because we were weak. The new galaxy needs to be different. Everyone strong enough to defend themselves. Everyone obligated to help each other. The Mutual Defense Pact, Rixana agreed. It's a good foundation. They made their way to the main summit hall, a massive chamber that had been built in the heart of Luna Station. Representatives from 83 species filled the tiered seating. At the center, where the High Arbiter's throne had once stood, there was now a simple podium. No elevation. No symbols of superiority. Just a speaking platform. Day-One took his place at the podium. The chamber fell silent. 6 months ago, he began, 3 billion humans died because the galaxy looked away, because protocols mattered more than lives, because fear was easier than courage. He paused, letting the words sink in. We're not here to punish you for that. We're not here to threaten or intimidate. We're here to make sure it never happens again. To any species, ever. On the screens around the chamber, images appeared, not of the swarm attack, but of what came after. Human soldiers training with Kran warriors. Vexian scientists working alongside Dr. Minho. Taurian explorers being fitted with enhanced survival systems. Species working together. The old council believed in separation, Day-One continued. Each species for itself. Help only when convenient. Run when the danger is too great. That system failed. It failed the 11 species before us that died begging for aid. It failed us. And it will fail again unless we change it. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. The new charter requires mutual defense. If one species is attacked, all species respond. No exceptions. No protocols that let us hide from our obligations. We rise together or we fall together. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in approval. I know many of you are afraid of us, Day-One said bluntly. You've seen what we became, what we're capable of. You're wondering if humanity will become the next threat, the next swarm. He paused. We're wondering the same thing. That admission rippled through the chamber. That's why we need you. Day-One continued, to keep us honest, to remind us why we survived. We didn't endure extinction to become monsters. We endured it to build something better. But we can't do it alone. None of us can. He stepped back from the podium. The summit is open. Let's build a galaxy worth defending. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates from different species began talking, debating, forming alliances. It was messy and loud and chaotic, but it was also hopeful. Suji watched from the observation gallery. Beside her, Kyung stood with his arms crossed. Think it'll work? She asked him. Maybe, Kyung said. If we're lucky, and if we stay vigilant. Always the pessimist, always the realist, he corrected. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's how we survived. That's how we'll continue to survive. Down on Earth, in what had once been Seoul, a memorial stood in the center of the rebuilt city. 3 billion names carved into black stone, arranged in a spiral that could be seen from orbit. Above the names, a simple inscription: "They left us to burn. We rose from the ashes. Never again." Children played in the shadow of the memorial, too young to remember the attack, but they would be taught. They would learn what had been lost and what had been won. They would grow up in a galaxy that had learned, too late, that looking away from suffering doesn't make it disappear. In orbit, the Ghost Fleet maintained its eternal watch. Silent guardians that never slept, never forgot. They were humanity's reminder to the galaxy: we survived, we remember, and we are watching. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, species that had once ignored Earth's screams now told stories about humanity. About the species that refused to die, about the people who had been pushed to the edge of extinction and came back stronger, harder, and more determined than ever. Some told these stories as warnings. Others told them as inspiration. But everyone told them because the galaxy had learned a lesson written in fire and blood. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never confuse mercy with inability. And never ever leave humanity alone in the dark. They had asked what made humanity special. Now they knew humanity remembered.